Hey, I'm Jenna Wolf, certified lactation counselor, parent coach, and extended breastfeeding mom of two. I fully understand the unique challenges of breastfeeding beyond the baby days, and I'm here to take your hand and support you along your journey. So toss that hair in a messy bun, grab a basket of laundry to fold, and let's get started. This is Start to Stop Toddler Breastfeeding. This week, I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Maria Harrison. Maria is a mom, a mentor. She has her Master's of Science in Education. She is also a certified hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner. She formerly taught school for 15 years, and she is the mom of two beautiful girls. She supports other moms to thrive while building fulfilling relationships with themselves and their children. This interview is one of my favorites. I am so glad to get it out into the world. Maria and I talk all things hypnotherapy, subconscious, unconscious things as women, as moms, and ultimately in our relationships with our children, how those things all show up, how to create emotional safety and the importance of it. And it's overall just a wonderful conversation. All of the details to get in touch with Maria are in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. Hey, Maria, it's so awesome to chat with you today. I am a huge fan of you and everything that you do. And I know we've connected about this in the past, but I would love to hear more about your story of becoming a coach and what led you here doing the work that you're doing through kind of your mom life experience too. If you could speak to that experience, I'm super excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, so I think after I had my oldest, who is 6 right now, I had a lot of postpartum anxiety. I was never diagnosed, but I had a lot of really high fears. I was constantly in an anxious state. And a lot of it was attributed to every time I would talk to somebody, they'd be like, oh, that's just what it's like to be a new mom. And so I would be like, okay, I guess this is just like what it's like. But then it just continued to spiral. And it got to a point where it was quite debilitating in the sense that it was like I was having a harder time like communicating with my husband because I would feel so frustrated. And I was just in such a heightened state of anxiety so frequently that I just didn't feel good. And so I had always been in the self-development world. I had always been intrigued by it. And I've always loved learning and learning more about myself and all of these things. But this moment really was a big trigger for me in looking at some different modalities that were out there. And so I started doing different things and I'd read the books, I would do the yoga classes, I tried doing meditation, I did all of these different things, but nothing really ever stuck. So I would do something, it would make me feel better, maybe momentarily, but then I would fall right back into who I was being. And we'll talk a little bit more about why this actually might be a thing when we talk about go into the subconscious and conscious mind. But I didn't really understand why it was happening, but I just kept reverting back to who I was being and the feelings that I was feeling. And so as I continued on, like I said, I started doing some mindset work. I started working with some different coaches. And then I got pregnant with my second, and I started feeling a lot better because I had a different focus. And then after I had my second, I did feel more confident as a mother. I think just as we sometimes do, as we have more children, you feel a little bit more confident and everything's not brand new. But then the pandemic hit. And that kind of sent me into a whole nother stress response. And because my body was already in a kind of stressful state, it just heightened that a lot. And that's when I really started diving into the self-development world and really taking a lot of actions to be like, this is not for me anymore. This is not what I want my life to look like. Where do I want to actually be? Like, I don't want to be in this story anymore of that I'm just this kind of person who is living this mediocre life. And I really started to work with other coaches. And I started at a more conscious level working with a mindset coach, which was fantastic. I started working with a naturopath to get like my hormones sorted. I was working with a personal trainer to get my body moving again and just trying to work from it from a very holistic way. But I was still struggling. I was still feeling very disconnected from myself. And this was something that I felt like I was doing all the quote unquote right things, but I was still felt like there was something missing and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so I call this kind of the void, right? There was this void within me. I didn't really understand what was wrong because I could see in front of me that my life was quite beautiful. I had these healthy, beautiful children who I loved so much. I had a supportive husband. I had a job that I enjoyed, all of these things, but there was just something missing. And I felt like I was really disconnected from my joy and feeling happiness. And gratitude practices really brought me actually into a state of anxiety of not feeling good enough for all of the beautiful things that were in my life, and also feeling like, what if the shoe drops? There's a lot of really great things happening, so when's the shoe going to drop? And this is when I actually found hypnosis and NLP, and I started working with a NLP and hypnosis coach or a hypnotherapist. And literally from my very first session, my world opened up. And it sounds so bizarre and it sounds so cheesy and all these things, but I remember going for a walk the very first day and being like, I could hear the birds singing and just
Wow.
looking around and being like, everything just looks different. Like I felt different and I couldn't place why, but I just knew that things were starting to change. And I worked with the hypnotherapist for quite some time. About 3, maybe 4 months, and then I saw her periodically after. And I just did so much work, and it was a lot of work. I had to really work on myself and be open and keep my mind open to the possibilities. But it really just opened up my life to actually being able to connect back to who I really was at my core and feeling who I had always been previous to having children. So that's my story. I know it's not a very
Yeah.
short story, but that's
No,
kind of the
it's
whole picture for you.
appreciate that so much. And I love hearing you like I think I have parallels to that idea of I was trying all the things and it was all okay and it was good, but there was like something else. And I remember the day that I was like, I am actually at peace today, like fully relaxed. And I was like, what is this? Like, I had such a similar experience in my own story. And for me, it wasn't necessarily finding hypnosis, but it was in the same sense, it was doing that kind of unconscious work and really doing the
Mhm.
work to connect back to my authentic self, like really deeply, and not just be working on kind of those external pieces. So I so understand that. Yeah, I say a lot that those all of those things are so good and they'll tip you back into a relaxed state or maybe get you out of anxiety for the moment, but it doesn't really expand your capacity to stay peaceful and to stay at rest, right? Like it's not so it tips you back in, but if your
Totally.
capacity to be in that is like really skinny and small, then you're just constantly going to be doing things to try and move back, get back off the ledge, and you're not really going to be able to like actually live in that place. Does that make sense? That's been my
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit. And that's exactly what we talk about when we talk about the subconscious mind and or the unconscious mind. In the certification that I received, we use them interchangeably. So it's whatever you feel comfortable with. But I usually say the subconscious mind. But this is the thing is our subconscious mind is running these programs, and so some of these surface level things, and not because they're not good things to do and not because we shouldn't be doing them, that's absolutely not what I'm saying. Like I still have a gratitude practice, I still journal, I love doing yoga, I love all of these things. It's not about these things aren't bad, it's
Right.
or that these things are bad or not good. It's just that when we're running these programs in our subconscious mind, if we're not working with the subconscious mind, it's so much harder to change things, right? We can say
Yeah.
affirmations every single day, but if they're not reaching our subconscious mind, nothing's really going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's so awesome. So maybe from here we could talk about how we talk to the subconscious mind and how we work through that and the role that hypnotherapy plays in supporting that change. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, and I want to make it clear that I do hypnosis, but I also do NLP, which is a more
Right.
linguistic ability to reach the subconscious. So you don't always have to be in hypnosis in order to change the subconscious mind. And so I want to make that really clear. There's so many different ways to reach your subconscious mind. Hypnosis is a beautiful, very relaxing way to receive messages that reach the subconscious mind very easily, but it is by no means the only way. Like you can do somatic stuff, you can
Right.
do NLP, like you can do tapping. There's so many different modalities, and different modalities work for different people at different times. And I love all of those modalities. And so I just want to kind of preface it with that.
Course. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I absolutely, I support my clients working with subconscious work too, and we use many different modalities, absolutely, and I use, like, the safe seat practice, which is what I'm trained in through, like, the Pure Joy parenting model, but absolutely, and I still use hypnotherapy and all those things too, so I love it. So
Yeah,
I
and
wanna
I
dig
think
into all that.
absolutely, and I think that it's about keeping our minds open to multiple modalities, right? Because when we can use these different modalities, we're reaching different parts of us, and sometimes we need different things at different times,
Mhm.
right? And so this was something that when I was a client of hypnosis and NLP, this was something that I love so much, that the change was quick. And that was what, like, for me, it was like, I don't want to be here for months on end trying to figure out what's going on. And so you could see the changes very quickly. And that just allowed me to notice that things were working. And so to go into kind of like what is hypnotherapy and what is the subconscious mind. And so our subconscious mind is something that every single person has, right? And we are always doing things from our habits, right? Or things that we have done over and over. And this is our subconscious mind. So only about 5% of our day is actually run by our conscious mind, and 95% of our day is run through our subconscious mind, which is absolutely wild that this isn't more widely known. And I know it's becoming more widely known, but when I learned this, I was pretty blown away, because this explains a lot as to when we're trying to change things. So the day that you decide, I want to start waking up early, or I want to start eating more vegetables, or I want to start drinking more water, or I want to start reacting in this way to my children instead. But this is all conscious thought. And so that's only 5% of what's actually happening. And so we can say these things, and it doesn't mean that we'll never be able to do them through the conscious, but they need so much repetition. I once read that you need to do something about 300 times to be able to, like, consciously to get it into your subconscious mind. So it just takes a lot of repetition in order to do it. And this is why we see that, maybe you'll start drinking your set amount of water that you want to drink for a week, and then all of a sudden you go back to, oh, I keep forgetting, because your subconscious mind just starts to go in back into play and run the show, because you're no longer consciously thinking of it, because our subconscious is running the day 95% of the time. And when you wake up in the morning, you probably run your day exactly the same way for the most part. You wake up, maybe you grab a drink of water, or you grab your phone and you start scrolling through something, or you check your emails, or maybe you're somebody who doesn't check your phone in the morning, which is amazing. And so you get right out of bed.
Yeah.
Um, and you head over, you brush your teeth, or you have your coffee, but you usually do everything in the same order, in the same way. And this becomes our program, right? And so we have all these different things that are programmed into our mind. And this is how we're running our day on an autopilot. Right. And so when we start to learn about the fact that we can actually do things with our subconscious mind to reprogram them in a way that truly serves us, well, then things change, because we can
Mhm.
actually start running our day more consciously, but because it's on a different subconscious program. So, something that I think is really interesting is from the ages of 0 to 7, children don't really have a conscious mind. And so it's developing over these 7 years. And so it's only at around age 6, 7 that the conscious mind actually starts to come into play. And that's why they start to actually question things, right? But if you tell a 2-year-old like that, like an elephant's going to be coming to the house today, they're going to be like, really? Because they have
Right.
no conscious thoughts. So, like, they just believe everything and take it as fact. And so they have no conscious mind. And so everything that's going into their subconscious is already starting to run the programs that you will later have in your life. And so it was Dr. Joe Dispenza who actually stated that by the age of 35, like 98% of your life is already run on a full autopilot. And like you are literally not having hardly any conscious thought. So your body is waking up in the morning, and when it's driving in the car, it's saying, oh, I'm supposed to feel anxious right now. This is the time when I usually yell at the people in traffic. And then when I get
Right.
to work, oh, this is when I start to feel really upset. And so when I learned this, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what I was feeling. Like I was completely running this anxious program. It was like I would do something, I would start to feel better, and then my body would fall right back into that anxious program. And so then when I started to do hypnosis and NLP, and it was able to remove some of the things that were bothering me that didn't need to be there. We're not talking
Right.
about like changing things that like we want to be there. When this isn't stage hypnosis, there's no quacking like ducks, there's no barking like dogs.
Right.
Like this is like things that we actually want to be doing in our conscious thought and making them suggestions to our subconscious mind so that we can start actually running on a program that we want to be. And so when I started to program in things like joy versus anxiety, I started to behave in a way that allowed me to access the joy and actually see, feel, and touch that joy instead of
Yeah.
just running on that anxious program and changing who I actually was fully being.
Ugh, I love it. And I love how everything you're sharing, it's so interesting because it's so parallel to the work that I do. You're using like different language and different frameworks, but yes, yes, like I so love it. I talk about like attachment theory. So, how we have this blueprint that we were
Mhm.
given in our early childhood experiences through the attachments that we had with our caregivers, and then how that dictates. And we believe that the world is either safe and secure or that it's a place that there isn't safety in it, and we're constantly having to protect ourselves. And so we end up with this, if that's an oversimplification, but more or less, we can be in these two kind of places, right?
Mhm.
How the work that we do is by speaking to that young child inside of us, right? And creating that
Totally.
safety, because that anxiety was there for a good reason when you were perhaps a young child, right? Like there was a purpose for it at one point, but it's not necessary anymore. Just like you're sharing, and how you can, yeah, shift that and create those changes deep inside. And I talk about like implicit memory versus explicit memory, and how, yeah, under the age of 5, like we're forming purely implicit memories, which are like body memories and like memories in our nervous system. And they don't have this kind of date and time stamped onto them. So they're living
Mhm.
inside of us. And so, yeah, it becomes your unconscious programming. And that's how you move through your life based on these triggers that are like causing us, yeah, this is the time I feel anxious because this is what happens here. And I just, oh, I love it. I love it. It's so parallel to the work that I do too. And so it's so great to hear you sharing all of those things. So you're sharing about how hypnosis works on this, and NLP works at supporting your unconscious programming to shift from like a programming of anxiety to a programming of joy. And how you're talking about like how traffic, this is the time that I
Mhm.
get anxious, or this is the time I get upset with the cars around me, and this is how I run through my day. So how has that changed and affected your experiences as a mom? Like in those moments of parenting and in the relationship to yourself, what is that how has that shown up there?
Yeah. So a big thing has been just how much more aware of my own triggers and being able to really separate me from my parenting. And this is like a really big thing that, I I've always tried to parent in a way that was quote unquote perfect, right? I always wanted to, and there is no such thing as perfect. Which is hence the quotes, but I always wanted to be doing the best that I could and what I perceived should be the way that I should, and I use this word should very highlighted, should be parenting. And I was very consciously aware of not wanting to put my stuff on my kids. but I
Mm.
didn't always know how not to, I should say. And so the thing is there's no should, is there's no right or wrong way to parent, which I know as a parenting coach, you could probably attest to, is that there is no right or wrong way.
Absolutely.
And that is my perfectionist that I have been working on for many of years to release my perfectionism. And sorry, I got off track there. And but coming back to how it's really helped with my parenting journey is when we do subconscious work and through hypnotherapy is we're creating a relationship or a rapport between our conscious and subconscious mind. And so this means that our subconscious mind and our conscious mind start to actually work together, and they stop feeling like we're working against each other. Have you've ever said that, like, why does it feel like my brain is like not doing what I want it to do? Like, why am I not doing the things that I want it to do? So when we start to do this work, we actually create this beautiful rapport. And so then we actually get on board. And so one thing that has really helped me is that it's just made me so much more aware of my own triggers, and how, like, when I'm being triggered, that's actually in having an emotional response within me based on something that has
Yeah.
previously happened to me and has absolutely nothing to do
Preach.
with the girls. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And it takes work, and it takes a
Yeah.
lot of awareness, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that it's so eye-opening when you start to be like, wow, this is actually all about me and actually has nothing to do with them. Like, my frustrations with them right now has nothing to do with them. It's all me. It's all my own rules that have been created over my program. And so when I started to be able to connect back to joy, number one, which was like the main thing that I was wanting to do, is because I felt like I could always see them in front of me. They always made me smile. I knew that I loved them like immensely. But in my like body, I could not connect to that joy, even though I could
Mm.
see it. I couldn't feel it. And that was like a really big problem for me, because it didn't feel good to me. Like, I was like, I want to actually be
Mhm.
able to feel this, and I want to make it safe for my body to feel this. And I think that a lot of people
Yes.
can actually resonate with this, is the fact that it can sometimes feel scary to be in so much gratitude and so much joy. And actually,
Yes.
Dr. Brene Brown, I
Brene
was just
Brown, yeah,
listening to her.
foreboding joy. Yeah, I was gonna say, you're
Yeah.
talking Brene Brown here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just actually heard her say this, of like that it's like one of the most scariest emotions to feel,
The
because you're just waiting
vulnerable,
for the
yeah, the
shoe
most
to drop.
vulnerable. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, you're channeling Brene Brown here with all of your foreboding joy. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
So just being able to connect with that joy and really just
Yeah.
do that. And then in terms of relating to the girls, and when they are doing things that I maybe maybe they're triggering me in some way because they're doing something that maybe as a child I wasn't supposed to be doing, or I was told that was wrong, or whatever it is. Like, I'll give you an example. My oldest daughter takes taekwondo, and she loves it, like absolutely loves it. And she is not very competitive. Like, she doesn't really have this competitive streak in her. And like and so she just carries on, and I'm like, "Do you want to practice at home?" And she's, "No, I'm good." And she just keeps going. And so then I found myself getting really triggered. Like, why
Yeah.
doesn't she want to practice? But she knows how to do this move. Why isn't she doing it? And
Yeah.
so I could feel myself like feeling so triggered. And so if I wasn't consciously aware, my response would be, we need to practice. Like, you need to get that next tape. Like, it's very important for you. Don't you see the people around you? They're
Yeah.
all trying to do their moves, they're getting their tapes. But because I am consciously aware that this is a trigger for me, I'm able to pull myself back and find safety within myself and bring safety to my own body, that this has nothing to do with her. She's on her own journey, and her journey is not my journey. And so while I can
Yes.
encourage her, oh, sometimes when we practice, we can move through things that we want to be doing as long as we want to be doing them, but I'm not forcing her to do something that is completely unaligned with who she is as a person. And this has been the most beautiful gift that I've ever received, is being able to recognize those triggers, not feel wrong for having them, finding safety within myself, finding compassion within myself, really tending to my own inner child while also being a strong role model for my daughter so that she knows that she gets to be who she's meant to be and that she doesn't have to do my own stuff that's from me.
Yes, I literally have goosebumps. I'm like, yes, preach. That is the work. That is the work in parenting. Oh, yes, I love that. And I even love like talking about the emotional safety piece and really creating capacity to be with yourself and how
Mhm,
self-compassion, I say it's the antidote to all
mhm,
of that should and shouldn't, right? Because it's yeah, because there is a little kid inside of us that's hurting.
mm,
We move into that, but that's a vulnerable and scary place to connect with. We moved away from that for a reason, and so it's tough to move back into that. So that's when that blanket of self-compassion and kindness just becomes like that safety that you need in order to become aware, in order to be able to see your child as separate from yourself. Or else
mm,
we're just because those shoulds are those introjections where we've internalized all of these expectations, but then because it's uncomfortable, we project it out onto our children,
mm.
like, and we make them the
Yes.
source of our discomfort. We can't like support that within ourselves. So we're like, it's you, you're the problem
Mm.
unconsciously. But yeah, when we can bring that awareness piece in, then we have that capacity to be with that and to, yeah, separate the two and then bring them back in a beautiful way. I love that you're talking about that rapport between the two pieces of ourselves so that we can make choices in the way that we show up with our kids.
Yeah, and I think what you just said was like instead of pushing it out on someone else, and this is something that I've been talking a lot about lately, is just like the responsibility of ourselves, right? And losing the judgment piece, right? Like understanding that there's no need for judgment because when we understand that it's actually the subconscious mind that's running a program, it takes judgment out of the equation because it's not
Yes.
like you're not choosing to lash out at your child. It's like a subconscious program. And so when we work on building that rapport between your conscious and subconscious mind, the judgments just starts to dissipate because you're like, okay, so instead of judging myself like, I can't believe I just did that, you're like, what do I need right now? What do
Yes.
I need right now?
Yes.
And how can I separate it from this? And that means different things. And this is something that I talk about with clients and I do myself is I will remove myself from a situation if I am highly triggered by one of my children. It's not like I never get triggered. Like we are all human beings here.
Right.
And but I know now that I would rather remove myself from that moment and know that I can take a couple of deep breaths and really just connect with myself and figure out what I need so that then I can go back and actually connect with them on a level that they need. And it no longer has
Yes.
anything to do with me. And I can work on my own stuff, but I've taken myself out of the equation for a minute, collected myself, recognized that the trigger is about me, and now I can go and actually be there for my child. And I'm not saying that you need to, if they're having a hard
Right.
time, you just walk away from them. That is not what I'm saying. You're
Right.
still there, but you're like, even if it's me, sometimes my youngest is a deep feeling child, and for her, like sometimes I have to just stop, take a couple of deep breaths, remind myself this has nothing to do with me, and then I can connect with her in a completely different
Yeah.
way. I sit on the floor, I let her know I'm here for her. I let her know if you need a hug, I'm here for you, but I don't put any of my stuff onto her. I don't make her stop. I don't tell her feelings are wrong. I let her just do her things while also letting her know that it's safe to feel what she's feeling and that I'm here for her when she's ready.
Yes. Yes, I love that so much. And that is like the practice that I support parents with is called the safe seat practice. It's creating a safe spot inside of yourself that you can move to. We do create a physical safe seat, but also like internally, in order to support yourself so that you can show up for your child. And
Yeah.
that's a like Leslie Potter from Pure Joy. That's her modality that I'm trained in that way. And I love that. I have so many thoughts. I could go in so many directions, but I also love how you're talking about like the not judging because it's the unconscious mind. That
Mm,
is where I refer to that as like the wisdom. Like it was such a wise programming that happened. Like that you were
mm,
so smart for creating that piece at some point in your life. And just that, yeah, it's not your fault because that I think is the thing. We create so much shame around it. It's if I did this, then it's because of me and we end up becoming like our own internal like source of threat, right? It's oh, but it's part of me and I'm showing up like this and I must just be broken or and it's no, like that was like a beautiful thing at some point and it's yeah, it's this unconscious piece that's like playing. It's not Yeah, you're not choosing to show up that way. It doesn't speak to who you are as a person. It doesn't speak to your worth or your value or your potential. Like there's so much there. I appreciate that so much. And I think that it's interesting too, just to connect this back to, I know this is a breastfeeding podcast, but the work that I do in that way, there's so much shame and introjections around breastfeeding and around feeding our
Mm.
kids and around whether we're choosing formula or breast milk or how long we're choosing to breastfeed our child. And then all of those introjections show up as like projections onto our kids. So many
Mm.
times I see this in my clients, especially with moms who are breastfeeding toddlers, because it's just becomes such a hot mess of just a lot of pain. That's like that unconscious, it's just showing up in this hot mess of like a space. And I don't think we talk about the emotional safety piece enough in that area in a lactation standpoint. And so that's my little mini soapbox for just a minute
No,
to connect
absolutely.
that back.
No, absolutely, but I would like to touch on it because we have to remember that the subconscious mind, like its main thing, its prime directive is to keep you safe, right? So it is
Yes.
always making decisions to keep you safe. And so the moment that anything comes into play that starts to feel unsafe, and rejection, maybe if you're, I nursed both of my girls till they were 2 as well, so I got some of that as well, like, why, oh, so like, when are you stopping? Well, when I'm ready. That idea of being rejected from people, and it's not like a conscious, like, I know that these people
Right.
aren't rejecting me, it's a subconscious rejection. And so when these
Exactly.
things come into play, this is where like safety work really comes in, right? Of like bringing
Yes.
safety to our body, that like, I am safe, I am here right now, everything is okay, this is just somebody's opinion, they're allowed to have their opinion, but I'm here, I am safe, and bringing that safety piece to us, because our subconscious mind is always becomes in this fear response because it's trying to keep us safe, not because it's trying to hurt us, not because it
Oh,
doesn't want us to do well, but it wants to keep us alive. That is all it
exactly.
wants to do. It wants to make sure that we stay alive and breathing.
Yeah.
And if that means that we judge ourselves, it doesn't care. And so
Exactly.
yeah, so when
Yeah.
we can understand these things, that's when that judgment piece falls away, because we're like, huh. Now, I do want to caveat that, like, with, that doesn't mean that we don't take responsibility. So
Right.
we can release judgment. We don't have to. We've been taught for so much of our lives that the only way to get things done is by to tell ourselves that we're not doing a good job. And
Right.
this is not about that. We're like, we don't need to judge ourselves in order to make things happen. And if
Yeah.
anything, I would argue that that's the way that it's not working for you. If you're judging
Exactly.
yourself to hopefully make it happen, it might work for a little bit, but it's anyways.
Yeah.
But
No,
we
I
need to
hear you.
yeah, I feel like I could go on a whole tangent. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
but still the importance of still taking responsibility. So now I know that this is something that's running in my subconscious mind. Now I know though that I can still change my subconscious mind. So this is something I learned as a child. It no longer relates to me. I do not believe in this. And so now it's my responsibility to change it and to do what I
Yeah.
need to do in order to change it, whether that's working with a coach who helps me parent, or working with somebody who helps
Yeah.
me understand how to feel safe breastfeeding into later years where other people don't think it's safe, whether that's like redoing your programs for your emotional stuff, all of these things. But it becomes our responsibility that now I know that this is available to me. So now it's still my responsibility to help change it, not in a judgment way, but in a loving
Right.
way.
Absolutely. I literally I'm getting goosebumps. I'm like, yes. And I have a whole program called Own Your Breastfeeding Story, which is
Mhm.
literally about owning the story in your mind about
Mm,
breastfeeding so that you can own the story that takes place in front of you. Because so many breastfeeding moms feel like they are victims to their kids' desires to breastfeed, to societal pressures, to
mhm.
what's happening in their body, to all of the things. And I could really get passionate about this and go on that totally. Um, and I love the taking responsibility piece. Even in Pure Joy parenting, we talk about not apologizing to our kids, instead taking responsibility for our actions. Instead of
Mhm.
coming up and being like, I'm sorry, because we almost end up taking the the responsibility off of ourselves, like putting it onto our kids and saying, you need to forgive me now so that I feel better about myself. That if I just said I'm sorry, then that takes care of it. But instead saying, no, I showed up like this. This was how I had needs that I didn't meet
Mhm.
myself, and I put those needs onto you. And so that is actually what, because we could flip this whole thing over and talk about the emotional safety of our children and how they're
Mhm.
feeling. Because if they're feeling responsible for our emotional states, then we just perpetuate the cycle, right? Where they grow up feeling like they have to take care of everybody else and not taking responsibility for their own needs, which is what we're doing and how we got here.
Mhm.
So it becomes this
Absolutely.
generational blueprint that gets, or programming that gets literally passed down, right? Through generations. And when we aren't taking responsibility for ourselves, then our kids are the ones who are left picking up the pieces, and not to put blame onto any actions we've had in the past or anything. And it was all survival, it was all to keep you safe. You didn't know another way.
Absolutely.
But it's so critical, that responsibility taking piece. And I'm just so grateful that you brought it up, because yes, I agree so much.
Yeah, and in terms of what you were just saying, like, a lot of times I'll still apologize to the girls, I'll say t but I don't put it on them. It's not, "I'm sorry, but you were frustrating me." It's not, it's a,
Right.
"I'm really sorry that I reacted like that. Mommy," just like sometimes how you have a hard time with your emotions,
Exactly.
sometimes mommy has a hard time with
Right.
my emotions too, but next time I'm gonna remember to that I need to take some deep breaths before I react too. And I think that this is a really great thing in showing our children also. This is coming back to like my teaching stuff too, but coming is like really allowing them to see that we're not these perfect human beings
Yeah.
and that we make mistakes and that we don't always have a strong hold on our emotions and that sometimes our emotions take over us too, just like them. And because I think that this is a really relatable piece for children to see that we're not this like holy grail of a person. And because then as we become adults, we think, oh my gosh, adults always keep it together. They always know what to do. They always know how to react. And that's just not the truth, right? Like we're all humans living this human experience that is has lots of triggering moments for everybody, right? And so I think it's important that we really have that emotional, like linguistic piece. That's not the word I'm looking for, but I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but like where we're able to actually articulate what we're feeling and let our kids know that it's okay when you feel those ways, but this is what we might do next time to help ourselves through it and use those coping tools that we give to our children for ourselves as well.
Yes, 100%. And yeah, I think that's so key. And even just, yeah, to talk about like the language of apologizing or not, of course, you can use
Mhm.
the words "I'm sorry" in a way that are, but yeah, I think that there are the kind of the two ways that we can often go with that apology, which is either, but you did this, or I feel so bad. Just reassure me that you still love me.
Mhm.
We can go into those pieces, and we can take but there's a third option of taking responsibility for our actions. And then I think that this is the other piece that I didn't mention, but the other part of the taking responsibility is then turning it and saying, and how was that for you? We can
Mm.
really like, because what happens I think is
I love
we
that.
are disconnected from ourselves. It's uncomfortable to be with what we're feeling, so we just put it on our kids. And if we are afraid of what they might say, that's the
Mm.
hard part. And I think that this goes back to what you were saying about adults have it all together. And what that ends up becoming is, there's expectations and there's a way of living that's perfect, and that's not me. And I don't have
Mhm.
that experience. So I don't know who to trust, and I don't know what to do or how to show up. But meanwhile, what's really important, and the way that we all can move around the world in a way that is supportive for our own experiences and emotional safety, is coming back to our own intuition, coming back
Mhm.
to our own feelings, and just like being able to articulate our feelings to our kids. So supporting them with saying, and how was that for you? Now we're supporting them in the experience of connecting back to their bodies, of connecting back to their emotions and saying, this is how it was for me. And then we can give them the safe space to say, yeah, I get that, right? And be there with them, not dictating how they should experience that or what they should have felt, or trying to make us feel better, coach them to have a certain reaction so that we feel good. But then so they have that experience of tuning back in, and then they have the knowledge of what I feel is important. And
Absolutely.
that's how I move through the world, is by connecting to myself and knowing how I feel. And it's okay to feel whatever I felt. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad. And it's also okay. Sometimes the things I'm apologizing for or take responsibility for didn't affect my kids at all. And in my mind, I'm like, this
Absolutely.
must have affected them so big. And then they're like, no, it was fine. And I was like, what?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so I think that is that piece of how do we make changes for our kids that will support them in the long run? We take care of ourselves, right? That
Totally.
really does that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, like, asking, "How was that for you?" And because I think yeah, I just love what you were saying because I think that it's so important because going into what you said is, like, a lot of the times when we ask this, it wasn't even important to them, and that's where, like, the idea this is something I talk about a lot in my coaching
Right.
practice is the idea of a story. The stories that we tell
Right.
ourselves, and more times than not, the story that you've created in your mind is actually has nothing to do with actually what had happened. And so
Yes.
this is a really big thing. So I'm happy that you touched on that as well. And I love that question because I think that really allows us to get out of that story of here's the facts actually. And that didn't even bother them at all. They didn't even notice actually. And here I am
Yeah.
telling myself I'm a bad mom or didn't
Right.
react properly or whatever you're telling yourself as a story. Yeah. But just coming back to the hypnotherapy is like the thing with this work is that the more that we do this subconscious work, the easier things feel. And we're not in the story as much, right? We're not creating the story as much because our subconscious mind is working with our conscious mind. And so when we do this subconscious work, things actually start to feel easier. It doesn't mean that your life becomes perfect because there is no such thing as perfect. It doesn't mean that you never are triggered, but it means that you move through life in an easier way where you're not creating a mountain out of a molehill all the time. You're not feeling these responses in your body all the time that trigger these different thought processes in your mind. And we can heal the nervous system through hypnotherapy, which heals the body, which heals the mind. And we know that the mind, the thoughts that we think, create the feelings in our bodies. So when we work on the thoughts that we think, then our body follows pace with that as well.
Right. Yes, 100%. And I do somatic work too. So like they interplay so much in polyvagal theory. I bring all of those pieces into the work that I do too, talking about the nervous system regulation, the sensations we're having in our body and how they relate to our mind. And all of those pieces are like, that's my wheelhouse. Let's
Yes.
let's go there. Love it. And I think that that is just such a beautiful piece. And as I do the somatic work, I do the thought work as well. And said this before we hit record, but like Maria has a wonderful free hypnosis that listen to like on the regular and love it. So I'm a huge fan of that. And I will plug it for you right now. So go grab it, everyone.
Thank you.
But yeah, and I do think it's important to highlight that we're not perfect and we're going to be like, this is just life. And I had a freak out on my kids, like, I don't know, last week or early this week, where my daughter spilled an entire bowl of cereal full of milk into our couch, like streaming down the couch cushions, soaking up into every crevice. And I had literally told her, like, seconds before, "That's gonna spill, put it back on the table, please." Like, and
Yeah.
then she's, "No, it's not." And then whoosh, and I was like, and the interesting thing is that I freaked out. Do not get me wrong. I was like, I didn't explode in that moment. I tried to show up better. And
Yeah.
then it was like just one thing after another, like the next, and then I grabbed the thing and then I open it up and there's more Cheerios stuck over here. And then all the towels were dirty and I didn't have anything to clean. And like before I knew it, my daughter was like coming over to me. She just kept asking for another bowl of cereal while I was cleaning up. And that's when I was like, no, get back over there. But how many times, like, I would have felt like a complete victim to my own experience, like in that moment, like just the screaming and the everything that came out in that moment and bubbled up. That would have, and especially as I was working in the parenting space a few years ago and um doing this work and trying to learn and understand just all the things you're talking about, that external work, right? How much I would have heaped the guilt onto
Yeah.
myself and felt totally hopeless and ashamed. And doing this work to become conscious of the patterns, instead, I was like, okay, Jenna, that was fun. You had fun there exploding for a minute. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. It was like, okay, like I did that. Right. And I was able to take responsibility for that. and also recognize that like I had a lot on my plate. Like I was going through a
Mhm.
lot. So that like self-compassion and those kindness pieces and all of that, like perfect. And
Yeah.
then I was able to take responsibility for my actions and ask my kids how they felt. And it was really hard to see my son, like who's 3, like hiding. Like he was backing away and I was like, "Oh man, like, I really messed up this one. That was not
Mhm.
good, right?" But to see then that afterwards, we were able to put a blanket down on the couch because I had tried to clean it up, but it was still wet and all the things, and sit there, and everyone was snuggled up. I asked them how they felt. I was like, "Hey, like, how
Mhm.
was that for you?" I saw that it seemed like it was scary for you. And by the end of it, we were all snuggled up on the couch, and I wasn't falling to pieces. Wasn't
Mhm.
like it was like, "This happened, and we're real about it," and then everyone's working to clean the couch up together, and, like, we were able to do that. So I just highlight that as an example too, even what you're talking about with the Taekwondo. We still make mistakes and we still show up in ways we wish we wouldn't. And we still, to say make mistakes, I don't really love even using that phrase, but we still show up in ways that we wish we wouldn't and do things that were, but taking responsibility for it, working on those unconscious pieces, it just changes the outcome, but it changes,
Mhm.
I think, the impact of it. And I would even say that those become opportunities to strengthen your relationship with your kids.
100%.
So, anyways, I was long winded there, but
Yeah, no, I agree though. I think it strengthens the relationship because again, they see that you're human just like them, right? Like it makes their and I don't love this word, but like their outbursts feel safer to them that they're not the only ones who experience them.
yeah.
And that they don't have and like you didn't sit there being like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry I did that. Mommy was such a bad person for yelling at you. I shouldn't have reacted like that." It was like you didn't do that. You took responsibility for it. You checked in on them, of course. Like you still checked in on them, but like at the end of the day, you showed them that like you have big emotions sometimes too. And I think when we can all understand that and understand that we're all learning, every single one of us is always learning and we're on just a journey of learning through our entire
Right.
lives, like, that it feels so much safer for everybody involved and we grow them at the same time and they're not going through all the judgment, I think is like the hope,
Yes.
right? Is that as we become more conscious and really teach them to have this emotional intelligence, which was what I was looking for earlier,
Gotcha.
is, which is what I was trying to talk about. And I was like, I could not think of it. But when we give them this emotional intelligence, it just allows them to release that judgment so much sooner than maybe we've carried it with us as we've gone on. And this isn't about perfection. So many things that come from our parents who did the best job that they could do. Like I love the
Absolutely.
statement. Like one of the main things from NLP is everybody's doing the best they can with the resources they have, right? And our resources are
Absolutely.
always changing, but we are always doing the best that we can with the resources we have. And I think that when we can keep this in mind, there's just so much love and compassion for all of us, right?
Yes. Yes, I love that. So I could talk for another hour, but we should probably start to
Yeah.
wrap up. I would love if you could maybe just that was an incredible statement to end on too, but just if you're going to be talking to the mom who is feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, acting in ways that she wished she wouldn't, what's your kind of one piece of wisdom or support that you would offer her right now? I
I
kind of
think
threw that
it's
on you.
just Yeah, that's all right. I think it's just, like I said, love and compassion for self, number 1,
Yeah.
is like moving through your life through a space of love versus a space of fear. And so choosing things that you want to do for yourself from what would I choose if I loved myself in this very moment? How would I go
Mm,
about this if I loved myself in
yes.
this very moment? Instead of feeling the fear of not being good enough, feeling the fear of judging, feeling the fear of not being perfection, like a perfection or doing things perfectly, excuse me, but just how would I react if I was in a place of love? If I loved me, what would I do? And I think that when we move through life in from this place of love, like things just open up in a completely different way for us. And I think also the other second piece that I would say is number 1 is just approaching life through love and also connecting back to your own intuition. And I think that this is huge, is that we've lost sight of our own intuitive abilities and we're constantly asking people outside of us what we should do in all of these circumstances when all of the answers truly are within us. And that doesn't mean that it's not like you can never read another book. It's not about that, but it's if you what you want to do, the answer is within you. And this is a piece that I work on a lot, even through hypnosis, is just connecting back with our intuition and understanding that we have the answers, that you don't have to go to the mom group to ask the moms what you should do next. You don't have to go to the mom groups to tell them whether you should send your kid to private school or public school, what you
Yeah.
need to do. And really just connecting back to love and connecting back to your own intuition and knowing that you have the answers. Like, you don't have to, because this is a breastfeeding podcast, is like, what would I do if I loved me? What would I choose right now? What would I choose? And intuitively, what do I want to do? Do I want to keep breastfeeding? Beautiful. Keep on going.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, a lot of the times moms come to me for weaning and they end up not because or they'll come to me to not wean and then they end up weaning. And it's like a different, like, it takes so much. It's just a beautiful experience to watch them come back to their intuition. And I had somebody ask me yesterday, what's the difference between surrendering or like the difference between making a choice to continue to breastfeed or just surrendering out of defeat? Like, what is the difference? And I was like, you know what? From the outside, they look the same, right? Just ultimately, you're not making any changes to the breastfeeding rhythm. But from the inside, it's a completely different experience. Either collapsing into it in this kind of victim state of, oh, it's just hopeless, or you're empowered and you're feeling free and you're looking at the endless possibilities in front of you from that standpoint, rather than just this like hopeless defeat. And that's a completely different experience for you and for your kids.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is when we can connect back to our intuition, like, we know what we want to do, right? We know what our path is for us. And whether that means continuing or not continuing, or doing formula or breastfeeding or whatever that looks, is we have the answers within us, right? And for your surrender piece, I know we're like closing up here, is I think that this is a huge one, is we think that we have to like white knuckle it through everything. We have to control it. And if I look at even just my two children of my breastfeeding journey with both of them, the first one being like, I didn't really know what I was doing. I had a lot of like people like putting their opinions in on me. And I was like, I am going to do this. I don't care what people tell me like to do. Like, I am
Right.
going for this. And it was definitely a rockier road with my nursing journey. Whereas with my second, everybody knew how I felt. Nobody like talked to me about it. I just carried on. I knew what I wanted. I was going for it. I knew I was like, this is the journey that I want to be on for me. I don't care what anybody else says. And my journey was a lot different. And that doesn't mean always going to be the case, but
Right.
that is like a perfect example of like me pushing and hearing other people's and letting their ideas get into my head. Whereas my second one, I was like, I don't really care what you guys have to think. This is what I intuitively know I want for me, for her.
Yeah. And yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And that is the transformation I hope to bring people to as well. And I know you do too. I could talk about that forever, of course. But Maria, can you just share where people can connect with you, and if they are looking to have some coaching, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I can be found on Instagram at Infinitely You Coaching. I'm not always on, but I have recently started on TikTok as well at Infinitely You Coaching. And my website is www.infinitelycoaching.com. That's the places you can find me.
Amazing. All right, those will be in the show notes. Thanks so much for being here today, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me. I really loved chatting with you today, Jenna. So thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thanks so much. Thanks to all the
My
listeners
pleasure.
too.
If you loved this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any episodes in the future. Also, check out my breastfeeding toddler communication guide and cheat sheet to learn how to say no to the feed while still saying yes to the need at www.ownyourparentingstory.com/guide. And that concludes another episode of Start to Stop Toddler Breastfeeding. The theme song is Little Balloon by Jenny and Tyler, and it has been a pleasure to share this time with you. I'll catch you in the next episode.